First of all, thank everybody for coming. I hope you will enjoy my presentation. So time for sharing. So I will start sharing if I can. Yes. Yeah. So as I mentioned, thank you for attending this presentation. I hope you will just take some takeaways from you. And yeah, pretty much. So thank you first. Thank you for everything, for being here, for attending the session, and also for GCon for having me. So thank you, all of you. Yeah, so why this session? This is one of the things that many people ask me, and I will basically try to cover the following things. I would like to review the basics around TDD. It's something pretty easy. I would like to basically help you to understand the benefits of building code designed by this versus building them after. Just basically compare the building before and after production code. Let's say I will show you an example. I will do a live coding session. Cross your fingers, everything will go fine, I hope. And yes, at the same time, I will try to show you the tips, or some of it I try to apply in my day-to-day. And yeah, so basically, I hope you will not run away from this session. Yeah. And yes, who I am I'm Nacho. I'm working here in Barcelona. I'm a senior software engineer in Dynatrace, and I love to write code and practice TDD and extreme programming. I started to write in Java, let's say, time ago, before the FX 2000. And also I'm the founder of Barcelona Java User Group and co-founder of the Java and JVM Barcelona conference. Yeah, I've been used to run by the mountains and those things. And also I'm father of a beautiful girl. I tweet from time to time. If you want to just ping me, after all, just this is my Twitter handle, and I will basically I will be really happy to know your opinion about this talk and whatever you've been, or we can discuss about TDD, cloud computing, etc. So I would love to, and also to talk about communities, etc. So yes, because I'm used to this. Well, probably all of us are used to this working remote. Please ask questions anytime. I hope we will be able to. I will be able to try to answer your questions, and then we, with this approach, I think we will be able to, let's say, do the session more, let's say, agile and more fresh than just something like me sharing a lot of things and then just waiting until the end. So if you want to stop me anytime, just please raise your hand, and I think somebody from the organization will come and say, hey, Nacho, we have a few questions, and then we can continue. Yep. So yeah, big warning. This is based on always in my personal experience. So if you find something, oh, this haven't worked for me, or I have a different opinion, or this is not really true, this is what I found in my career. So yeah, this is the first thing that I would like to cover. So the agenda, as I mentioned, we would like to cover a few things. So where this thing about TDD came from, and the advantages and disadvantages. I will not, you know, share lies about it. The process and rules, how it works for the people that doesn't know anything around it. The good appetite normally apply, and others that I would like to apply in few cases as an example, as a live coding session, then the final recap with all the things. So yeah, let's start. So the history of this thing about TDD came from the 90s. And was thanks to Ken Beck, who basically, I would say, rediscovered what's this concept around building things that basically you can later on verify that are working as you expect. And the idea came to him when he was working at, I was the company Chrysler, and he was working at a big project at Chrysler, and he thought when the machines, the computers are, you know, big machines like this, he thought that there should be a mechanism to verify that the tape that you've been writing as a program, there should be a way to understand how this program should behave as you expect. And that's why more or less this let's say analogy came to his mind, saying that we could basically identify something that we can use to basically verify something, while can help us just to build code in the test that then can help us to then write the production code. And it became part of this book, of a string programming book, and also he wrote another one called Test Driven Development, my example. Yeah, so pretty much. And now I would like to just invite you to imagine, no, right? In a beautiful world, just imagine I don't know, a place where the things could happen, right? So now imagine, put your mind in this scenario where you can, for example, in a place where you can find defects earlier when you are running or even designing your test, so you will be able to easily detect some errors. And at the same time, you imagine that you can follow a simple process that can help you to design and to develop your software in a, we say, in an easy way, in a straightforward way. And your software at the same time, because those things that I mentioned, your software is going to be faster and easy to refactor, because these things that are creating in a process, an easy process that will help you to then later on change the code as you've been growing. And at the same time, imagine that in this beautiful world, you can have a software that guides you on how a consumer will use your components. So and that will be something really amazing, no? And at the same time, you will have tests that are like living documentation, no? Like something that is pure things that are changing every single time that you have to change a few things. And also the software that you write is likely to have less bugs, and for sure the cost about doing and maintaining your software is going to be lower. I share here a few references about why those things around TDD are true. You can probably follow some others, but those are the ones that I've been remember, or just pointing here just to verify, or you can verify later. And I will share later on the presentation. And so basically the question is, oh, you Nacho, you tell me that TDD will solve all of our problems or my problems, right? And this is not true. So TDD has some disadvantages. I would say there are some, but at the very beginning, it's really complicated. So it's not so easy to start. I would say there are not too many good places to help. And also majority of people, I would say, that are not using it daily. So it's really complicated if you don't have colleagues that are not helping you, and also has a learning group. So depending on how difficult is your code, how is the design in your platform, and also your software design capabilities, that will be more difficult or more easy. At the same time, it can be a large investment in a team, depending on how experienced you are, how the members of your team, and it requires time and basically effort, no? Because you have to apply the process, you have to understand it, and then later on you have to come up with practices that you have to apply in a, let's say, easy way. So it's really easy to forget it, about, especially in an environment that is not helping you, or because for any reasons your colleagues or your team doesn't understand it, or would like to experiment with you. And at some time it provokes resistance. In some people, they don't like the idea of writing tests before writing the production code, and therefore they're always trying to say, oh no, this is not a good idea, I don't understand it, I don't want to apply it. And at the same time, they can share with you a lot of symptoms that the things are not working, like for example, the syndrome that it has to be related with code coverage. And TDD is not about code coverage. This is a result of applying TDD, that you will have let's say a higher level of code coverage, but this is not exactly the main goal around applying TDD. And in a summary, I would say that it's really extremely difficult to master it. Every single, let's say, a week, you can actually learn another, or have a look on different articles, and you will see how beautiful the things you can learn and practice in another way, etc. So yeah, probably many of you will say, oh, still I don't understand how this works, but I don't have a picture in mind. So I will say that I will use some analogy to help you to understand how it works. And then let's imagine, no, long time ago, probably many of you just started to write code, no? And as you, for example, we're learning driving a bicycle, no? So I would say there's something like this, applying TDD. But now imagine that now that you're being older, you have to learn driving a bicycle, but not your bicycle, another one. It's going to take you a bit of more time. No, it's going to be a bit more difficult for you, and it's going to take you a bit more time to be really, I would say, efficient, right? Driving this bicycle. So I would say that more or less TDD is something like this. And what it basically does is to helps you to design your code in I would say, more modularized way. So basically, it's going to be used for doing a better design and in a coding process. So basically, the result you're going to have is that you're going to will have a result based on a particular practice that basically is going to give you the opportunity to create modules and pieces of software that are going to be, let's say, linked, but better designing in terms of modularization and in terms of isolation. So yeah, at the same time, I would say that TDD is a difficult thing. At the same time, everybody knows, no, the magic happens when you get out of the comfort zone. So you have to, let's say, kind of break your rules. And I would say, think outside your comfort zone and see if this could work for you. So let's continue with the process. I'm sure that probably many of you have seen this picture. But basically, I would like to just explain it for the people that doesn't know how this is a basic cycle of TDD. And there are just not more than this. It's basically 3 steps. The first one is the red one, I would say, is the idea of start writing a test, watch that this test is failing, and move to the next one. The next one, the second step, is to pass this test that is in red, let's say, to green. So basically write the enough code, the minimal code that you can do for passing this test to green. And the last one, the third one, is a refactor step, which basically can give you the opportunity to see if the code that you already wrote, it's okay to change it, to improve it without changing the behavior. So basically, those 3 steps, I would say, they're the important ones, or the last, the ones that you might know to understand how to apply TDD. And basically, you can, let's say, change it another way, but basically it's to specify first what you want to code, just this thing about writing the test. The second thing is basically just write enough code to satisfy the behavior that you want, just make it work and accomplish the behavior that you expect. And the third one is to clean your code, just make it better. I would say the test or the production code, remove duplication, apply some patterns if you find something, or just basically make it better. This is basically the simple the cycle about TDD. And somebody called Uncle Bob, probably many of you know that person. You say that there are some rules that we can basically understand it another way. So in the first, let's say, step, you basically, you are not allowed to write any production code unless it's to make it fail. So the idea is basically you have to focus first on tests that will help us then to demonstrate the behavior that we want. So basically, this test is going to help us to create then the code to achieve the objective, to create the behavior. And the idea is that you are not allowed to create the production code any more than the unit test sufficient to fail. So basically, we have to start writing tests, but the test has to be the first class citizen. So, and the last one, I don't know why the animation was like this, but the last one is basically you are not allowed to write any more production code that is sufficient to pass, but it makes us basically make the test pass, no engineering, let's do a simple code and pretty much around it. So simple solution and make the test passes. So let's go and continue with the good habits. Know as many of you now, we have, I would say, different habits from time ago, and now we have to clean our hands from time to time. I would say that right nowadays it's more frequent, and I would say just before writing, in case of applying TDD, before writing production code, just check that your test is failing. Otherwise, you're going to create code that probably is, who knows, is going to be driven by a test, or is driven by a particular reason that you have in your mind. Another recommendation I normally apply is basically try to create tests that has only one reason to fail, because for this particular case, you will see, for example, test that has many reasons that it's going to be difficult for you to understand in which case this one is failing, this one is not failing, and how to understand what's going on. And the last thing is more related with the process. I will recommend you to write the assertion first, and we will see later on why. And talking about habits and recommendations, I will recommend you to follow few ideas about naming your test classes and methods, etc., because then you will see how the things are going to be improved in a way of you will understand it easily. For example, the first thing is that I normally do is I use I rename, let's say, the test classes under this should suffix, basically to force me to understand and describing the actions that I want. For example, in this case, as you can see, if I ended the test class as a should, I can continue describing the behavior, just a pure English, just describing all the phrases that I want to achieve as a behavior in a different test. So basically, all the should thing is already covered by the name of the class, and then the things I would like to achieve are the name of the test. So basically, I want to fail, I want to do whatever, and of course, don't describe the internal. So basically, it's explain the behavior from the outside perspective. So the result of this let's say, technique is basically your tests are going to be more focused on business, and therefore your test method, they're going to describe behavior, and it's going to be more easy for your colleagues and for all of you, all the people that are working with you. Basically, is that you will have a better understanding of what this class does. For example, you will not understand probably what a session replay this parser does, but probably many of you could understand what those methods are understanding. So cannot process when a beacon is not valid, when the content is not okay, or the hash is not working as expected. You don't need to go into the details, but you already more or less know the behavior that is happening. So some tests they can fail, but basically they will describe in better understanding what in which scenario are you failing. And as I mentioned before, I try to do and follow some order to let's say to create my use my approach around TDD, and I will continue here how to explain it. So first, the name of the class, right? The second thing is name of the method. That in this case, what is the behavior I would like to achieve? And the third one is explaining the things I would like to achieve. So basically what I want to achieve is to, for example, in this case, I know I have to return an empty state when no beacons are received. Did you imagine that this is an example? And the idea is that I already know that I will have a state that has to be exactly the same as the previous state, or has to be like the empty state, no? And then what I can do, you will see is that, oh, at this point, my IDE at this point will tell me, oh, but I don't have the state. I don't know what is this previous state. That's exactly the point. So with your IDE, you will know how to create those variables, and then you will go from the bottom going up. So basically, at this point, I will trigger the code. So this is the previous step, right? So I will go and continue with this state and then create this class. Where this class came from? Well, probably in this case, this class came from where I would like to execute something. And this is the result I would like to compare with exactly the state that I would like to review, right? And then later on, what I have to do is to basically compile everything, just basically do the things that I need for basically make the test passes. What I need to do probably in this case, if this is a calculator that does whatever logic it does, I will probably need another piece that I don't want to connect right now, or I want it, I don't know, it depends on the test, but probably I don't want to just connect to the database at the point. And then what I want to do is basically to mock the result of this repository and see if in this particular case, I want to verify that this is the result I expect from this calculator, right? So going, let's say from the bottom, going up. So how to start? Well, I have some ideas, and always I recommend the people to start slowly. Let's say little by little. I would recommend always to try to make it in an environment where you can manage and you don't have, let's say, things that could rogue and can give you some pains. But basically, I would say there are a lot of things you can do, like starting with Kata's personal projects, practice in your company with a small exercises, or basically pair with somebody else to make it. I will continue right now talking about pairing, but for the ones that doesn't know what pairing means, is basically a practice where two developers are working in the same, let's say, problem. As in the picture, we have two persons that are already focused on a problem, and basically one is looking for a particular result, which is basically arriving to as fast as we can to the result, to the maximum, to the finish line, sorry. And the other one is basically focused on the probably on the 100 meters that has in front of him or her. So the idea is basically that we have two roles, the driver and the navigator. The driver is focused more on what we have to do right now, and the navigator is basically having a look on the perspective on the strategic idea, no, to see what we can do on the long term, and not forget, for example, the direction that we would like to follow. And the idea is basically to have this back and forth between people that has one role to switch to another, basically, because then you will see that this feedback, continuous feedback, will give you a better reach about the better, let's say, idea about how the system is, let's say, reviewing, how the system is behaving, and how this continuous back and forth will help you to get better feedback and improve the system while you are building it. And I would say that is a recommended practice in few places. And now I think if you don't have questions right now, I think it's time for the live coding. So I normally try to say, okay, I would say warning, live sessions, there are things that normally they could happen. And when live coding happens, things could go wrong. But yeah, let's try to do this. So leave me a second, I will drink some water. And let's move to the practical way. And you will see how I try to apply in a particular example. So let's imagine that we arrived to a company, which is a startup basically that sells sells or rent out films over the internet. No, something that probably some companies are doing nowadays. And the idea that we arrived and our manager said, okay, we would like to build a service that allows us to retrieve a list of recommended films to the users of a particular platform. And basically the idea is that we have to get the list of films that are associated with a particular genre. And the idea is that by default, the results should be ordered, must be ordered according to an average rate given by the films by the users. You know, when the people like a film, you can vote by a number saying I like it very much or not, etc. And then the film should contain at least, well, particular fields like IDE, a title, a year, when it was published, and tags, and more genres. No, and we can have here an example. You can have a look on the code on this repository, but basically, yeah, this is the idea of this service that I'm going to try to create right now. So let's see. Let's open an IDE. I guess you can still see my my screen. And basically, this is the film, how I can call it, film recommendation service. No, film recommendation service. Makes sense? Yeah, I think so. So right now I'm used to either Gradle or Maven, but right now it seems that Gradle is not still, let's say, compatible with Java 17. But I think it's gonna work in a, I would say, in the future, not that long. Yeah. So basically, let's go back for a second. Let's remember that we have to build a service that returns a list of films, okay, associated with a particular genre, okay, and they have to order in a particular way, okay. Okay, so how we can start doing this in a TDD style? Well, there are a lot of things that we can do, but as you can see here, the project is empty. One of the things I normally do is to try to use the dependencies I like the most. So in my case, I would like to use Maven with JUnit 5, and I normally use a library that's called AzerJ for let's say adding the verifications and the library that I would like to, I normally use for checking the assertions. And with this in mind, if IntelliJ already get all the imports, I hope so, then we can start. Not like this, sorry. And then what I can do is basically start with the field recommendation service should, as I mentioned, right? But what I'm gonna do is basically to go in that direction and see if I can create on the name, because now I already know what I can do basically, and now I can create a method that says, okay, we had this service will return, right? Should return films by genre, right? It is the thing that they mentioned, ordered by average rate. If I'm not wrong, this is exactly what the people or people said. Where's the presentation here? Yeah, okay. So that's it. So let's start with the code. So basically what I know is that the films, once I call this service, the films that I will receive, something like this, right? Something like this, that could be the films. After calling the service, that could be the film recommendation service, come on, service, could give me all the films by average rate. Right, and I can basically use I would say the genre. The genre can be, as an example, science fiction, right? Pretty much. And as you can see, this is the trigger that I did it in the wrong way, but basically I know that this is the thing that I like to call, and what I know is basically that the assertion that I would like to do first, that is basically this one, right? Assertions. I would like to assert first. What I want to say, that basically the films that I get from this method, right? From this, this has to be equal to the expected films, and then we will go one by one up. We will go one by one to this, and those films can be those ones, right? So let's do it that way. Yeah, so this is the recommendations that I will create, and this is the expected films. Because expected films, I don't care right now what is going to happen. Let's do it in this way. So expected films can be this one. And now I'm going to create the things just to make the things compiling, because right now I have a test that I already know how to make it, right? But right now I see that it is telling me, okay, but I don't know exactly about this service, anything. And those at the same time, I don't know the expected film. So let's create that as a local variable. This has to be the recommendation service, not the recommendation service should, but the actual service I'm going to create in production, right? So I would like to create that exactly in my main Java thing. That's the thing, right? So yeah, you can see it on the left hand side, but now I don't need anything anymore, anything like this. So now, as you can see, the film service is not initialized, let's initialize it, right, like this, right? And then, as you can see, the ID is telling me, okay, I don't know anything about this film average by rate, and also probably doesn't know anything about these expected films. So right now, let's put it like this to create and create that method, right? And basically, well, the ID is not helping me too much, but this has to be a list of films, right? No recommendation service, just this one, exactly. Yes. And now let's continue with this. And this has to be the genre, we said, no? Yes. So let's go back here. As you can see, the method is still not compiling. So the test still is not in red, because basically I have few things here that are not really fixed. So for example, the first thing is that the class film, right? We don't have a class film because already we don't know, but we have to create it. And yeah, it can be the same. I haven't used how to say default package, but for sure it's not a recommended thing. So I will recommend you to use a recommended package. And the thing that we'll have to have a look on this is the things that they mentioned. No? We have to use an IDE, a title, a year, etc. Okay, so let's try in that way. So basically, it has to be like this, no? An IDE. What else? A title. A year when it has been published, I think, no? Yeah, and one more tax and one more genre. So for not complicating the thing, probably a list of strings can be enough. This is a genre or tax, sorry, and the list of, this has to be the list of genre. Okay, and yes, I'm gonna use Java and the list, okay? And I think we don't need anything else. Apart from that, I think we can basically import that class, that has to be this one. And of course, I have to trigger that code. Let's see if we can basically run that test and see what happened. Basically, I created a few classes and a method. So let's see. Okay, so this is failing as expected because basically, well, probably many of you imagine I'm throwing an exception here. So probably, yes, it makes sense to fail. But now I can try to move it to green, right? So I have to think about how we can solve that. Oh, what a weird name, by the way, for a method. Probably is a good idea to put it like films, no, by average rate. Yeah. Okay, so in this case, what I can do is to first to accept that this definition of expected films is not the good one. So what I want to say is that based on the conditions that they talked to me, they mentioned to me, we have to retrieve the films in a particular order and also by a particular a particular order basically. So what I have to say is to build this list of expected films with a better let's say business around it. So in this case, what I would like to do is basically help me with the idea of some snippets that I have, is to create some list of suspected films, because otherwise we are not gonna move in the correct direction. So let me have a second here because I think I have it that way. Yeah. So basically here, as you can see, there's nothing really fancy. Basically, there are two constants, I will say, for creating the list of films that I would like to check. So basically, two constants I will create here for using it here, right? Nothing really complicated, but basically, it's not to not wait the time for creating and those variables and run it and see that this expected field has to be like this. So still the test is not passing, of course, because the implementation is not done. Now that we can create, or just we can basically try to fix that. Let's run the test again after this small improvement. So the thing is that apart from this, what I can do at this moment is to think about how we can solve that. One of the things that somebody will do is basically, well, if I return here the list of films already, they will pass, and basically that's the result. And the idea will be that we have to think about how to implement this in a way that I can use it in production, and this could probably think about how I can design my solution based on something that I can reuse and then also move to a production style. So in this case, for example, I can think how I will basically now I'm designing, how I would like to solve that issue. And in my opportunity, in my case, what I would like to do is to basically have a support of another piece of component that could help me to retrieve the list of films. And in this case, probably something like a repository can work, because basically it's something that can be used for connecting to a database, used whatever language, probably SQL or no SQL, it doesn't matter, to get the data from the database of a persistent, from the persistent layer, and then get the data back and then return it back to the service. This is one of the ways that I would like to see if it's possible to solve it. And for doing that, probably here, I would like to basically introduce this component to use it. And basically, this is something that we can do. So instead of throwing an exception, what I can do is to use, right, this film repository that I was commenting, basically to see how I can retrieve the films by genre, right? Because at the end, this is the thing that I will pass it, right? And at the same time, if you remember, I have to think about that it has to be order by average rate. So basically here, I have to do something like this. So sort order, and I would say something like average rate. Average, come on. Okay, something like average rate, right? And you will say, okay, I don't have this class anymore, and also this repository. Well, let's go one by one. So the idea is that I would like to create this film, right? And it has to be this film repository. Come on, Nacho. Repository, right? And this is something that you can create, because basically it's a class, can be here. Forget about the name of the package for sure. And then at the end, we have here a method that can help us. So basically here, I can create a class that could help me. It's not a class, sorry, probably much better, an enum. Exactly. An enum. And then, yeah, and basically now what I want to say is to create an enum because that can be the average rate. So now my definition of that method is much better, because at the end I know that I'm going to pass a genre, and also I can probably reuse it with another order. And now I can create that method, right? So this is going to be the films, this is going to be the genre, and this is going to be the order, the sort order, right? And yeah, so let's do right now this. The test, if already passed the test. No, I cannot invoke it because this is null. Okay, so basically here, this is not implemented in correct way, because basically this field is not already, let's say, defined. And what I have to do probably is to use it. So how we can do it? Well, probably here, I have to assign it, no? Otherwise, film repository, right? And what I can do is to create it as a field here, something like this, and then use it. But you will see that now the constructor does not exist. Again, this is again something like this. This has to be the same one. Oh my God, I forgot the NS. Okay, no problem. So films repository, right? So now what I did basically is to just create the field, sorry, for that class, and then basically I assign it to the particular instance, and then I can use it as I want. But again, the result is the same, because basically still this film repository is null. In this case, because the logic of this, I would like to implement it in the repository, just to the effort of getting the data from the database and then connect it to the database, etc., and also retrieve it in a particular order. I don't want to, let's say, here in the unit test where I'm working right now, I don't want to spend too much time and also effort on the CPU side, on the continuous integration side, to spend a lot of time wasting CPU cycles just to connect to a database, right? So at this moment, what I want to say is to maintain this unit, this class, this test unit, sorry, as a test unit. So basically what I want to say is that this method, this particular element has to be mocked, because I don't want to connect it exactly to a database, to a real database. And what I want to say is basically I have to use it as an extension thing, if I'm not wrong. I will remember like this, mock it extension. Yes, I think it's like this. So basically what I want to say is that I would like to mock this because I don't want to connect to a database. And right now, if I try to run this, the result has to be different. It will not work, but it has to be different. Yes. Why? Well, basically our test is saying, okay, I was expecting a list of films, but basically the result is empty. And the reason why I have this is because basically I haven't described the behavior about the repository, right? So one of the things I can do is to define what the repository will do when I'm gonna call the method. So basically in this case, I can find use that method. And basically, when I use this science fiction and pass this method, this science fiction call ordered by average rate, right? What I have to do is to basically to return the list of expected films, because it's exactly what we expect from the repository side in this test. So what do you think will happen right now? I think the test should pass now. Yes, it's passing. And what we have done is at the same time, starting from a test, we have a part of the equation that is building this business is already solved. But you will say, okay, Nacho, but you haven't resolved anything. Basically, you have an empty repository here, and this you haven't mocked it. Yes, but we have part of the business logic already covered when the next piece that we already designed, that is the repository, is already built. So what we can do right now? Well, the solution I think is more or less clear. I have to, oops, not like this. I have to create a test, right? To evolve, let's say, this and implement that solution that is exactly the repository and implement that method. But I want to say is I would like to implement it in a proper way. And the proper way in this case is not a unit test. What I want to say is that I would like to implement it in an integration test, because I would like to check against the database that when I used a particular gender and particular order, when a particular data, I will get the result in an order that I will expect, right? So this has to be an integration test. The point around this integration test is that, as you can imagine, there are a lot of ways of connecting to a database, different ways of using it in different databases. So right now, for doing it, let's say in the best or the fastest way, I will use one of the approaches I will recommend you. So basically, I want to introduce a new dependencies. That's going to be the ones that I normally use for my examples. Where are you? I cannot see it. Come on. Okay, so I will introduce these dependencies that are the ones that they normally use. I basically use test containers for this kind of tests. It's basically a really nice library that will give you the opportunity to run a test container, based on a particular runtime, and then you will be able to connect, use whatever you want to with your container, and then run the test, and then go back and destroy the container after the test. So basically, it's going to help me to create a database, connect to the database, fill it with some data, and then I would say connect to a particular example, and then continue with my implementation and see if I can make this work. So right now, what I want to say is I would like to cover this functionality about the film and genre. So what I want to say is I would like to return, right, a list of films that has to be filtered, right? It has to be filtered by genre and also ordered by average rate. Right. So yeah, this is the idea. And from doing that, I would like to say something like, yes, something similar as I did before. I would like to assert, come on, assert that, no, assert all, no, sorry. Not those assertions, assert that. And this has to be the class, come on. Yes, assert J, I think it's assert J. Yeah, so basically what I want to assert is the films that I get when I call the film repository, right? Film repository. Oh, come on, and today is my bad day for me. When I call it by genre, right? By genre, and I pass it science fiction in this case, and also the order, sort order by average rate, then I expect is equal to, right, to the expected films. Expected, this is the thing I would like to check. And basically this has to be, well, it doesn't matter, but basically I can use it as a list of films again, right? And something like I will continue in a minute. But here, yes, I would like to import that, yeah. Yes, please. And at the same time here, I need this film or local variable. So right now I will do it like this. And probably I have to, yes, initialize it, something like this. And then when this is, they have to work, right? And I will basically initialize like this. So let's do it like this. Probably this is going to fail, as many of you may know, but I have to think how to, let's implement this, no? Because this is already null. I have to implement it. How to implement it? Basically, what I like to do is to, as I mentioned, create this test that could connect to the a real database that I will use test container for that. And basically, this is the things I would like to use. So basically, I will run a Postgres container with a particular configuration I will show you in a minute. And basically, I'm going to get this data source using this particular configuration. That is not really difficult. Basically, is the default configuration. And basically here, what I'm going to do is to basically connect and use the database for getting this implementation. For doing that, as you can see before, I have to set up this Postgres with a particular configuration schema, etc. So that's the thing I have again in this let's say Scratch data. And the idea of this is basically that I would like to show you just in a minute. This is a list of films, the table of a list of films, the list of users that I have with the data and the ratings, because the ratings are the ones that I have to review, then order by rate. So as you can see, I have here John, Mike, and Luke, and all the values related with films. And the films are, Matrix, Star Wars, and another one that is up. And here on the right-hand side, you will see that there's science fiction, the one that doesn't have science fiction as a genre. And then later on the ratings. So basically, I will populate the data, the database with this data to be able to use it from my test. That's more or less the idea. And for doing that, I have to create a resource. Yes, so this one, and basically copy this file here. So basically, what it's going to do, my runtime test containers. I don't know. So this is the repository. So sorry, this is the init is well. I already copied here, right? And the idea is that with this, what is going to happen when I run this test is that the container is going to start. It's going to wake up. And I hope it's going to populate this data with the structure that I already mentioned. And what I have to do is probably here later on, as you can see, it's taking a bit of time, but still the method is not working. Why? Because basically I'm not using it at all. So let's try to use it. So film repository should be like this. And the last thing I have to do is probably inject or just use a list of expected films. So as you remember, I have another test already that is being used. So as you can see now, it's called, right? So the method is already called, but this is failing. What I would like to do is basically, just for the sake of not going so slow, I would like to move those methods, those constants, to be used in that particular, in the test that we have right now. So right now I will create something like this and move it. For example, so something like film recommendation object model. That is something typical in as a name of class and particular pattern they used for moving constants.
Nacho.
And right, yep.
I'm sorry, but you can see at the right upper corner low battery. I don't know how much time you have left on your Mac.
Sorry, completely forgot. Thank you very much.
Right.
So I completely forgot. Yeah, now I solve it. Oh, forgot. Thank you very much for this. So you were, I guess, in panic with this. Oh, what's funny. Thank you. What I was actually doing is basically move these constants now to be able to use it. So as you can see, I changed that test. I will run it again, and I hope that this test is already working because it's the previous one. Yep, it's still working. But now this test is not working. Still, it's not working. I hope I only move those test classes, those constants. Sorry, and the idea is that then here I can use it, right? So right now, because it's in a common class, I can use something like this again. Just matrix. It was matrix. Yes, and the other one is Star Wars, if I'm not wrong. And then I hope, yes, please, just a static constant, yeah. And the other one has to be Star Wars. It was Star Wars, right? Come on. Well, the ID is not working as expected. Yes, Star Wars, right? So no, I don't want it like this. So basically, the idea is that now I will check with the result of the expected films that have to be like this. And as you can see, the result is still will fail because the films are not really returning anything, and this method is still failing. How I can do that? Well, in my opinion, in this case, I think many of you will know how to connect to a database and get the data from this structure of the database. And for the time being, I think it's not really important in that case. It's basically, I will show you what I have here just to show you my idea of implementation is not really complicated, but I will just show you to understand what I can do. It's basically based on the structure of the table that we have. We have users, we have films, and we have ratings. What I would like to do is basically connect to a database, use a particular SQL sentence, basically is going to do a join where the IDs of the fields are the same, and then basically group by a particular data, and then order by the sort order that I have, and then return basically the objects that I want. That is basically for every single thing that I get from the SQL, get it, and then assign it to the film, and then return all of them. This is exactly what this method is doing. There's nothing really complicated, but basically it's a SQL sentence throw to the database, and then get it back parsed, and then instantiate all the classes that I need. So if you don't mind, I will copy this just to show them, because I'm not sure if I will have a lot of time, and then I would like to just have time to show you the result. So right now, the data source is not working. Well, the data source, I haven't used the data source, so probably I have to pass it here to the constructor, and then create a constructor like this, right? And then probably this data source has to be a field here to be used, and then probably the film repository is going to do some things. Let's do the test again. What it could happen now? I hope right now the test will work. So yeah, the test works basically because what I'm doing with this implementation that I know is a bit longer than I expected. I don't want to spend here how to connect to a database and do a join with a particular filter and a particular order. But basically, as you can see, I have a test that already took me a few minutes, okay? But it took me not too much to understand how I can connect to a database, get the data at the order I expect, and using the filters I want. Basically, is to pass those filters, and then here use it is in a where condition or in an order condition, right? And then, of course, parse it as a list of fields, as an element, a record on the database will get instantiated and parsed as expected. But as you can see, the implementation of the test is not that difficult, but the implementation on the production code is more or less a bit more complicated. So now I will show you the last thing is that show you how the result of the I would like to see it. Well, basically, I would like to run all the tests. Come on, you can do it. And then you will see the result. Why the module is a Python? I don't know why I need, probably I haven't said. So my idea is to, well, I'm taking too much time, but the idea of this implementation that I did that I showed you today is basically I wrote few lines. That's okay. I wrote here in the integration test a few lines more than I expect, but on the logic on the service there are not too many lines, and the repository is really easy to, let's say, check that it's working, because basically I have a test already covered by that. So basically the code coverage of the result or the code wrote in production is not really bad, because basically I have a service that is 100% covered by tests, and a repository that is, I would say, highly covered by tests, because I know how to retrieve a record from the database, and also at the same time how to parse it and how to retrieve all of them. So the result of code coverage and this, because applying TDD, was, I would say, better than in the normal cases. And then I think I'm done with the demo. I will come back to the slides and then end up with the final recap, and I will show you basically time for questions. So recommended content, there are a lot of content down there, and I will share there is a lot of content with videos that I will recommend you, but that again, there are some basic content that you will have to understand what it means testing, what it means doubles, what it means mocks, what it means stuffs, and at the same time how to practice it and do it in small, let's say, examples. And the other thing I would like to mention, there are a lot of books. I would recommend those four that I have here. The first one probably is or the most that I normally recommend is the Growing Object-Oriented Software Guided by Tests. You will see let's say, a full example, how it evolves and how your project can, let's say, change based on different approaches. The right one, the Art of Unit Test, is really easy to read. It's for C# developers, but it's really easy to read. And there are things that probably can help you to understand things in another way around. The test-driven development, my example, is the typical one by Ken Beck, probably a bit idealized. And the last one is a test-driven example with a practical guide. And yeah, I think the final recap. Yes. So I hope you will you have seen that the TDD helps you to develop code in a simple and I would say effective way. I was at least in a better modular design. And as I know it's a difficult to adapt, but you have to maintain this practice. So you have to try and see how your software will have less bugs and it will be easy to maintain, which is less is the point. So do the things easier and be able to maintain it faster. And there are some tips. I hope some of them can make your life easier. And I would say that try to pair it with somebody else. It will help you a lot to understand all the things and to internalize it and make it better. And as the other people are doing, just practice, and try to practice again. And yeah, that's me. That's from my side. So yeah, if you have questions, I will really happy to try to answer those questions from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Nacho, for the light speed programming session.
Thank you. So let me check the questions. Stefan, didn't you want to write this first? That's exactly, yeah. Probably I made a mistake when I was trying to write the integration test, and I haven't write the answer first. That is a good point. But because normally I try to go faster, but I was always checking the time, and that's why I probably forgot it. I think that will clear up. Yes, I hope so. So you use Spock with add. No, I haven't used Spock, and I like the idea of using Spock, but the time that I've been trying Spock, the issue that I have with it is that because it's based on Groovy, the thing that evolves with the JUnit is that I would like to basically create the things, and then the IDE is helping me to create and define the signatures. With the Spock, was not able to make this happen because Groovy is so dynamic that the IDE doesn't recognize if I will have to create a new method or another, or the arguments are on one type or another. And that's the thing why I have been used to Spock, but I have to try one time in the future. At the beginning, it was nice in action. Thank you, Julian. I hope you like it. Then how to define my dependencies template? Oh yes, it's so easy. You can search for it on Google, but there's a place in IntelliJ for doing that. Let me remember that. Editor templates. If you find, if you go for search on the site, and you can search for templates, you will search a place for file and code templates, and then you can go there and create your own. Yeah. How to define? Yes, that's the point. You can do it on your IDE, and in IntelliJ is like this. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Somebody, Stefan, do you have a question?
Yes, I saw you named your unit test with should at the end, and I think it's a nice idea because it gets a nice test report, a very readable report. However, this will not be executed automatically by Maven, for example. So did you have Maven or Gradle configured that the should tests are automatically
Yes.
Executed?
Yes, that's true. The thing about Maven is really easy to configure. Basically, you have to include a pattern on the, I think it's on the, I don't remember right now the plugin, but it's on basically on a configuration of a plugin. You have to include not only test, but also should, the files that end with should. That is pretty easy to achieve. And the Gradle thing, I think for Gradle, you don't need anything. Basically, you put it on the test folder, and you exactly certified. Thank you, Jurgen. And that's exactly for Gradle. If I'm not wrong, you don't need to do anything. Just put it on the folder where you normally have the test, and Gradle will execute it, and you will get the result.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Sven, how do you handle larger tests like end-to-end and likely TDD approach? Oh, for end-to-end tests, I would say there's a bit more difficult because on the end-to-end side, normally you have a big behavior you would like to check, and there's a lot of things around it, just like setting up the database, like connecting to a browser, or just do a few clicks around it. So probably in that case, I haven't been able to apply TDD on that, and also because of the effort of creating end-to-end tests, I will not be in that way. I've been able to apply it, I would say, but I would not say it's not possible. It's that the things that you have to achieve when building an end-to-end test is a bit more complicated, and probably you have to describe in a in another way. Normally with Gherkin, if I'm not wrong, I have seen many projects using Gherkin for that. But if you use something that could be, let's say, can give you more easily, more frequent feedback, I think Cypress from JavaScript is one of the things that I've been using. It was really useful, and the idea was to get you, if you're able to get the feedback faster, then I will apply the same approach to defining behaviors and then go by one on the different, let's say, components, and then to be able to apply different layers of TDDs in different components. Some recommendation for legacy projects from TDD. Oh yeah, a lot of recommendations for legacy projects, but the first one is that try to implement first TDD in the projects that you already know, and to start with small chunks of code that you already know, and try to cover it by test. Once you have your code covered by test, then you can start applying refactors. Otherwise, if you try to change your code without any particular, let's say, safety net, it's going to be really, really difficult. And also with legacy projects, in some cases, it's going to be a bit difficult to apply TDD, because TDD uses, let's say, the premise that you have to create a test for almost anything, or just for the new features. And the issue with legacy projects, there are many things that you cannot test because it was not designed in purpose. It was designed for arriving to a particular deadline. It wasn't designed for any, and for these cases, there are things that are really, really complicated. But even though I found that in many big projects, in many legacy projects, there is always a way to mock, to let's say, put something, a sim, etc., that can help you to just replace the thing that you would like to achieve. That is basically just not use a production database, just use a small one, as I did, for example. But it's not so easy, but it takes time. It takes time, but it is possible also.
I have to interrupt you here now, Nacho.
Yep.
The next speaker is coming up. Maybe you can clear it in the chat. We have to play some advertising.
Yeah, I can stay here while replying the people.
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay. Thank you very much.